This video is gonna be about about like Mexican culture, and that we don't really have to like stereotype in it like all the time. Like I feel like people who are considered or identify be Mexican, we actually fall into the stereotypes. So I'm here to say like it's not only Mexican culture that we have to stereotype in. Majority of post-colonialism, modern day Mexican culture is actually pretty low vibrational. And that's what creates low vibrational people. And that's why we think that we have to live in that stereotype, what the media and TV had broadcasted us to be like. Like lowriders, or like, no hate to like the anyone in this culture, but growing up I just always felt like we had to be that certain way to be Mexican, when I didn't understand that it was only a country and a nationality. So whenever I were to be like more Mexican, it would to be more like a low vibrational image person or low vibrational stereotype, and that I wasn't really compatible with. And I never really found myself to be compatible with that Mexican culture. No hate to anyone in that Mexican culture, but just me personally, the way to be Mexican is what was broadcasted on the TVs and shows and movies to be that's how we really are. And we're really not that way. There's a lot of us who are not compatible with like the Mexican culture that is portrayed nowadays, modern days. Like, even I tried to be like more Mexican, it kind of brought me to like depression, because it was just like a one-way stereotype that we had to be. Through the years, I mean, really through the years, I understood I was Native Indigenous. Like, oh my gosh, I don't have to be a certain way because a Mexican culture is only a nationality culture. So what's my ethnicity? Is to be Native Indigenous, and Native Indigenous is way more different than a modern day Mexicano culture is today. And you realize that even Spaniard is a colonized language, and you just realize like a lot of stuff is just like a nationality culture that is very low vibrational at times. Like whenever I understood what Native Indigenous culture is, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm more compatible than post-colonialism, modern day Mexican culture is today. It's not only Mexican culture that we have to like stereotype in. There's many like ethnicity cultures, because Mexican culture is a nationality culture that any other race can be, any race or ethnicity can be. Whenever you realize that Mexican's not really the only culture that we have to stereotype in, because it's not an ethnicity culture. An ethnicity culture is your Native Indigenous roots. So yeah, you can, if you don't find yourself to be compatible with like Mexican culture and you feel like you have to fit into a Mexican culture, realize your actual ethnicity roots, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, we have like stereotypes and cultures from Alaska to Canada to the Americas and Mexico and so on in South America. Like even like last year or like a couple years ago, I just always felt like it was so hard to fit into the Mexican culture. The girls nowadays are programmed to actually be attracted to like low vibrational stereotype, or someone who's always pent up with all this pent up ancestral trauma and modern day trauma. And that's why I could never latch on to like a girl that was like ethnically like me. They only liked one person, like the one way stereotype that was being programmed and broadcasted and normalized to be our stereotype, which it is now our stereotype, but there's many more stereotypes and cultures that we can fall in instead of just one stereotype that we feel like we have to fit in. These girls nowadays, they're programmed to like a dude in the post-colonialism Mexican culture who was pent up trauma and pent up ancestral trauma. Some people like that stuff, but there's some people who are not compatible with that. Whenever somebody is like brainwashed into like a culture that, especially that it came from like ancestral trauma, a lot of like ancestral trauma that is really pent up, and that's what creates culture, and then it gets even worse, and then girls are more into that more. I don't know, man, but we have to understand what a nationality culture is and an ethnicity culture is. It's not only Mexican culture or like Mexicano or like some modern day like cultures. No hate to the people in any of those cultures. I just don't find myself to be compatible with any of those cultures. It's not only Mexican culture that we have to so-and-so called stereotype in, or be, or try to force ourselves to be, because we have been portrayed to be like that for all these years. So yeah, there's more to nationality culture. There's ethnicity culture. You can always be a nationality culture that you were born from. But I mean, I'm not here saying like, I'm not here forcing anyone to be like in any culture or like to be a certain way. Just if you don't find yourself to be compatible with that certain culture, then you don't have to be in that certain culture, which many people do. But in a better analysis of a culture, that's we have more cultures on this Western hemisphere, especially if you're Native Indigenous to these lands. You can be like Puerto Rican, you can be Jamaican, you can be Chile culture, Peruvian culture, because the original inhabitants of those lands were like native indigenous people as well. It all just really depends on what tribe you're from. But even if you're from that tribe, you can still represent and show support and respect to another native indigenous tribe or native indigenous nation. Yeah, when it comes to like stereotypes and all that stuff, you don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to be a certain way just to fit in to be that, because that's only a nationality culture, and that's a culture that anyone can claim, and that's not an ethnicity culture. So yeah, if you don't find yourself to be compatible with the Mexican culture or just any culture that has been broadcasted to be a certain stereotype by Europeans who are in charge of the TV, broadcasting, television, yeah, you don't have to be that way. There's many more. We are the original inhabitants of this whole Western Hemisphere. So you can go ahead and be your native indigenous ethnic roots. You can go ahead and still be the post-colonialism Mexican culture. I'm not stopping you. It's just like, understand that that's a nationality culture, and you also have an ethnicity culture that you also can represent as well. Just never really seemed to like fall in line of like the Mexican culture. I actually one time been told to be more Mexican. I didn't know what that meant, because I actually, whenever somebody said you should try to be more Mexican, I was like, oh, okay. But then whenever somebody said try to be more Mexican, I thought of so many like bad stereotypes. I just, what came to my mind at first. I just thought of so many like stereotypes, or very like post-colonialism like Mexican stereotypes. I didn't think of the actual like Mexican culture stereotypes. I thought of like a lot of like bad stereotypes and cultures, and I was like, I could try to be that, but I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that at heart, but I could try to be. I thought of so many like of these negative stereotypes, and like more alcohol, or like just post-colonialism like stereotypes to like be. I mean, I like the food, that because that's native indigenous food that is in the Mexican culture. All that food is native indigenous food. It didn't come from anywhere else. But yeah, that whenever somebody told me to be more Mexican, I thought of so many like low graded, low stereotypes, low vibrational stereotypes. Some people like that, but I just looked at it from that point of view. I just looked at it and I was like, I can try to be that, but I'm not that at heart. Because you know what? That's only a nationality culture. It's not your ethnicity culture. That's only post-colonialism Mexican culture. Some people are like chilling in that, but some people don't even see it as a big deal. But me, I just never really, to be more Mexican, I just thought of so many like confusing, like low vibrational stereotypes. But yeah, we are really too deep into this post-colonialism stuff. There's more to just Mexican culture than we understand. There's actually ethnicity culture. If you're actually representing your Mexican culture, that's you're more likely to represent nationality culture. But if you're to do like native Mexican indigenous culture, that's your ethnicity culture. Or just any native indigenous culture, like Native American culture. But yeah, a better elaborated version of culture and nationality culture and ethnicity culture. There you go. There's more to Mexican culture than post-colonialism Mexican culture. Or there's more to American culture more than just post-colonialism American culture. There's native indigenous culture around this whole Western Hemisphere.